She stood in that courtroom, hands trembling, not from guilt, but from anger she had no right to show. The judge smirked, the crowd whispered, and every stare told her the same thing. You don't belong here. She wasn't the criminal they thought she was. She was something far more powerful. But no one knew that, not yet. What they were about to witness would turn humiliation into history, and make every person in that room question what justice really means. Her name was Aaliyah Carter, 19 years old, bright, quiet, and always underestimated. Most days, she blended into the background, studying late at the library, helping her mother at the diner, and dreaming of becoming a lawyer who could change things. She'd seen too much injustice to stay silent forever. That morning was supposed to be ordinary, a quick visit to the courthouse to drop off paperwork for a school project. But the moment she stepped inside, she felt it, the eyes, the whispers, and the subtle smirks that followed her every move. They didn't see a student. They saw a stereotype. And when the judge called her name, everything shifted. What started as a simple errand was about to become a public test of her dignity, and the truth she carried with her. The judge's voice carried across the courtroom, sharp, dismissive, and cold. Step forward, he ordered. Aaliyah did. Every pair of eyes followed her, scanning her like she didn't belong in the room. The clerk frowned, and the bailiff smirked. It wasn't just judgment, it was disbelief. A young black girl in a courthouse, standing where they thought only defendants should stand. She'd come to observe a trial for her college project, notebook in hand, careful and composed. But when the defense attorney failed to show up, the judge, irritated and impatient, snapped, "You're here for him, aren't you? Fine. Let's get this over with." The room chuckled. Aaliyah froze. He thought she was the assistant, or worse, a relative of the accused. She opened her mouth to correct him, but the sound died before it left her throat. Her chest burned with humiliation. She wasn't here to represent anyone. But the man sitting at the defendant's table, tired eyes, worn clothes, the same color skin, looked at her with quiet hope. And something inside her shifted. She could have walked out. She should have. But instead, she nodded. "Yes, Your Honor," she said softly, her heart pounding. The courtroom laughed again. The judge leaned back, smirking. "Well, let's see what kind of lawyer we've got here." Aaliyah took her seat, hands trembling under the table. She had no official right to be there, just courage, knowledge, and years of study that no one in that room believed she possessed. As the prosecution began, she scribbled notes furiously, catching every inconsistency, every bias dripping from the witness stand. Minutes turned into hours. The prosecutor threw questions like darts, twisting the story to paint the defendant as guilty before the truth even surfaced. Aaliyah's jaw clenched. She'd seen this pattern before, how words could be weapons, how silence could be used to erase someone's humanity. Then came the turning point. The judge mocked her directly. "Miss Carter, is it? Do you even know what burden of proof means?" A hush fell over the room. Aaliyah met his eyes. For the first time, her fear was gone. She took a slow breath, then answered, calm, precise, and impossible to dismiss. "Yes, Your Honor. It means the state must prove guilt beyond reasonable doubt. And so far, all I've heard are assumptions, no evidence." The courtroom went still. The judge's smirk faltered. She flipped open her notebook, pointing to the transcript. The witness contradicted herself. Twice. The timeline doesn't match. The evidence you're allowing wouldn't hold in any fair proceeding. Gasps rippled across the benches. The bailiff's hand twitched near his belt. The prosecutor's face flushed red. Aaliyah had crossed a line they never thought she'd have the courage to step over. But it wasn't over. The judge leaned forward, his tone now colder. "Watch yourself, young lady. You're out of line." Her voice didn't shake this time. "No, Your Honor. I'm exactly where I need to be." The courtroom erupted again, half disbelief, half awe. And for the first time that day, Aaliyah realized something powerful. This wasn't just about one case. It was about every case like it. Every black voice silenced. Every injustice excused. And as she stood there, unofficial, uninvited, unstoppable, the balance of that courtroom began to shift. But she had no idea. The real fight was still coming. The tension in the courtroom was thick enough to choke on. Every word Aaliyah spoke felt like walking a tightrope over fire. The judge's gavel slammed again and again, trying to silence her, to remind her of her place. But she didn't stop. Not this time. The prosecutor stepped forward, voice dripping with mockery. "Your Honor, this young woman isn't even a licensed attorney. She's just a student pretending to know the law." Laughter rippled across the benches. The judge leaned forward, eyes sharp, voice low. "Is that true?" Aaliyah didn't flinch. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded document, the official certificate from her accelerated law program, signed and sealed. "It's true, Your Honor," she said, her voice steady. "I'm not a student. I'm a certified junior attorney, assigned to observe your courtroom." Silence. For the first time, the judge blinked. His confidence cracked. The laughter died mid-breath. The prosecutor's grin vanished. She stepped closer to the bench. "And what I've observed here today," she continued, "is bias, intimidation, and a system that mocks those it swore to protect." The courtroom was frozen. The judge opened his mouth to respond, but she wasn't finished. "You didn't see me for who I was. You saw what you wanted to see, and you were wrong." The words landed like thunder. Every whisper, every smirk, and every dismissive glance from earlier echoed in that silence. Then, from the back of the courtroom, the man she'd defended, quiet, trembling, stood and whispered, "Thank you." That single word broke the tension. Reporters leaned forward. The judge sat back, pale, speechless. Aaliyah gathered her papers, heart racing but unbroken. She turned toward the exit, knowing the moment she crossed that door, nothing in her life, or in that courtroom, would ever be the same again. Because sometimes, justice doesn't come from the bench. It comes from the courage to stand before it. When Aaliyah walked out of that courtroom, the air felt different, sharper, heavier, real. Reporters swarmed, whispers followed, but she didn't stop. Her heart was still pounding, not from fear, but from the weight of what had just happened. She hadn't just defended a man that day. She had defended every person who'd ever been judged before being heard. News of the incident spread quickly. Headlines called it the day the judge was silenced. Others called her defiant, unprofessional, and too emotional. But those who understood, the ones who'd felt the sting of being dismissed, profiled, or underestimated, called her something else, brave. Weeks later, the court quietly issued an apology, but it didn't matter. The damage, and the revelation, was already done. Aaliyah returned to her studies, determined more than ever to finish what she'd started. Because that day wasn't just a fight in one courtroom. It was a glimpse of a truth people try to ignore, that justice isn't blind. Sometimes, it just refuses to see. Every word she spoke that day echoed beyond those walls. In classrooms, in homes, in hearts that had been silent for too long. She became a symbol not because she wanted to, but because she had to. And maybe that's the hardest truth of all. It shouldn't take courage to be treated as an equal. It shouldn't take humiliation to prove your worth. So ask yourself, how many more Aaliyahs will it take before the world stops mistaking brilliance for defiance? Because justice, real justice, only begins when we learn to see people for who they are, not for what we expect them to be.